coercion. Of course, we know things they are bad in the region, but expecting and getting this sort of travel advisory, someone sitting in Toronto, someone sitting in other part of the world, looking at those travel advisories and finding that Islamabad, the capital of Pakistan, is not a safe place to travel, to me, it's again some sort of diplomatic coercion that we need to actually ward off. And then again, another sort of coercion, strategic coercion that we are facing is the coercion that is spread and propagated through social media, the grey hybrid warfare, and of course the media. Again, we need to see joining us. So I was just welcoming the audience and just trying to shed light on the contours of strategic coercions that we are facing. Economic conspiracy theories, of course, I don't have evidence. I'm a student of these issues, but I'm again, it's sort of strategic coercion to put pressure on Pakistan for actually a tool to put Pakistan under pressure so that light on it. But now coming back to the main topic, and which is the foreign policy in the context of all of these coercions. Supported Pakistan, they didn't overwhelmingly supported India as well. So all five of them, they are giving the message to show restraint and to resolve our issues through dialogue. So for me, it's and the perception that the international media is painting about Pakistan, assurance from Saudi Arabia, from China, all of course, when we're talking of foreign policy, it's not only the Foreign Office. And we have resolved to basically sort out the regional issues in a peaceful manner for sustainable development. Our common enemy in the region is poverty. Our common enemy in the region is hunger. Common enemy in the region is malnutrition. Common enemy in the region is lack of clean drinking water, lack of sanitation facility. The whole of sustainable development goals will only be able to achieve them if we can divert our compromising on our sovereignty without letting other stakeholders and other powers in the region and in the world perceive that Pakistan is weak. So showing our strength, showing our resolve to defend ourselves, we have to then again show that we want to achieve sustainable development goals in a manner that can save not only 210 million people in Pakistan, but also 1/3 of the population which is lying in this region. And for that, of course, we have to have a comprehensive plan, and we have to have a collective effort. Thank you very much for being here. And as I said, as a student, I'm quite keen to listen to what experts would say on this topic. Thank you.
Region, particularly Afghanistan, and all what is connected for the current situation. Over to you, Ambassador Wazir Saab.
Subject that I was asked originally to speak about, but anyway, whatever, I'll try to do as much justice as I know to the subject. But if I'm failing or not coming up to your marks, I take your, I ask for your forgiveness in advance. Foreign policy, as they say, is the name of the game, whereby nations follow strategies to achieve national objective, and strategic coercion is an alternative that seeks to manipulate states' behavior through political and military means. It involves exerting pressure against an opponent in an attempt to compel his behavior in accordance with the wishes of the coercing nation. Now, with this definition of the two important issues, the foreign policy and the strategic coercion, let's look at our own country when it began as to where we stood. If we look at history, we see that nations which are born or which get independence and they are free from internal incohesion and from external pressure, they develop fast and they enjoy a much better life. But look at our own country. What happened to us? Right from day one, take it from there till today, well, with the exception of the last couple of years, I would say decade, we were politically not stable. There was no political stability in the country. And externally, we had immediate threats from our immediate neighbor. On our east, we had a problem with India, which unfortunately speaks even for the same thing today. But let me say here that I am very proud of the young Air Force officer who shot down 2 Indian aircrafts and made us all very proud to have taught them a lesson that, look, through using force, you cannot dictate your terms to Pakistan. You couldn't dictate to Pakistan when Pakistan was just a newly born state. It had hardly anything to defend itself, but it got the Azad Kashmir even then. And today when we have, as Prime Minister Imran Khan very rightly said in his last very short, precise and to the point speech, that what you have, we have it also. But let's behave sensibly, let's go into the talk, let's resolve the issue through political discourse, because use of force is no solution to any problem. So that forced us, the Kashmir issue right in the beginning, forced Pakistan to look more into the defense of the country, which got obviously more important than any other field. And then we carried on, and even till today, that happens to be the case. And then on the Western Front, we were not free either. We had the Durand Line issue with Afghanistan, which they even took in the United Nations by not voting in support of Pakistan to become a member of the UN body then. Well, that is a long story, but we were fortunate with Afghanistan. We had no war, but the tension continued. Between 1950 and 60, the tension on this subject continued. Durand Line, Pashtunistan, skirmishes near the border, it continued, it went on. And then 63, 65, relations were extremely bad. But despite that, I am happy to recall that during the 1965 war with India, our ambassador in Kabul was called by the government to convey to Islamabad, get any problem for you on the Western Front. And on that, even today, despite our not very good relation with Afghanistan, I am sure they will not create any trouble, any problem on the Western border. Having a lot of influence of India inside there, they know the sensitivities of the people across the border about this issue, so they cannot afford. And that reminds me of a famous saying of President Karzai to one of our TV anchors, when he was asked that if a war breaks between India and Pakistan, which side will you take? And he had no hesitation, despite reservation between the two sides, that he said, we will obviously stand with Pakistan. Having said that, when we focused on the defense, obviously our attention from the rest were taken. We didn't pay so much attention to the economy, development of economy as it required, or to the other subjects. And then happened the 1971 unfortunate incident where a majority took leave of us and became a separate state. There it is always said that India was involved or India did it, but I don't accept that. It was, I'm narrating these things just to come to the point that if you are not strong internally, you cannot be strong externally, or you would not be able to pursue your foreign policy as much strongly or as much forcefully as you want to. So the 1971 debacle, unfortunately, happened, we all know, because of our weaknesses. We didn't do justice to the people over there. They, apart from other weaknesses or mistakes that we made, they had won the election and they had every right to form the government then. But that was refused to them, and with that, the foreign powers played and separated them from us. Now, that teaches us a lesson, that if we want to be very strong, if we want to have a very effective foreign policy, if we want to withstand any strategic coercion, we must be united and we must be able to do justice to all, to be fair in our dealing, to be fair in the distribution of national assets internally, and all other things. Let's look at the war that we have fought for so long. I'm not a politician. I have no special liking for anyone. They are all equal to me. But forgive me if I admire Imran Khan here for what he said right when he took over, when he won the election, his first speech, when he said, offered to India and Afghanistan a hand of friendship, saying that if India takes one step, we will take two, and the same he offered to Afghanistan, which then later on proved that he was right. But why I refer to him was that what he said and what I have been writing about before, that this war on terror was not our war, but was imposed on us. We fought a war which was not of our choice, which was not our war. And he said, and I appreciate, that we are no more available like that. We are not guns to be hired. We will fight our own war. And since then, look at the foreign policy, look at the reaction of other states. The course, or I would say the attitude, has almost changed. Very fast, it's changing. America, look at it. There was a time when everyone who used to come from America would call you, would ask you to do more. President Trump is on record even to have said that we have given billions and billions of dollars to Pakistan, but what has Pakistan given in return? Deceit? Lie? Nothing? And then the same president, after a change in Pakistan, after what Prime Minister Imran Khan started following, that conveyed a very, very correct message abroad to everyone. The same president requests the Prime Minister of the same country, which he used to accuse for everything, to help him find a peaceful solution of the problem in Afghanistan. And later on, he expressed his wish to meet the new leadership of Pakistan because of what contribution Pakistan made in finding a peaceful solution to the problem in Afghanistan through negotiation, which are still going in Doha. I believe they are still continuing the talks. So what I am trying to emphasize, jump from one event to another event to bring it back to the point that if we are not strong at home, we cannot be very effective in our foreign policy. We may have so many wishes. We may want to be the best in everything, but people watch you. Internally, if you are not stable, internally, if you are people feel insecure, they would not come and invest in your country. If they see that your leader says something and then bends down for very little and does something else, they would not pay you attention. But I pray that Imran Khan stays to what he is doing. He has made us really proud. I at least can say that he has made me proud, despite my reservation on so many things before. But what he said after winning the election and on the issue of Afghanistan, on the issue with India, particularly in this war, he has taken, or he is taking the country very rightly and very correctly, and people are now appreciating, coming around. You see the change. You see the behavior of those people who were not prepared to talk to you yesterday. But today they are coming back to you because they found that there is a new leadership in the country which wants to have good relation around, which wants to have all the problems with the neighbor and anywhere else resolved through negotiation. Here I would just like to mention one thing. I won't like to talk longer because the main speaker is to tell us about the issue we have to learn from her. But would like to emphasize the same point that, or let me put it this way. When I was in service way back, I'll share one small thing with you. I was a young diplomat in Vienna, and over here we had martial law, and referendum was held, and the main item was that if you like Islam or not, if you like, then I am the president. And then there came a diplomat asking my senior colleague, I was standing just a few steps away, asking him that how the referendum is going on. What is it? And my colleague, believe you me, is a very capable person, still alive, very intelligent. But I found him there when the man walked away. I asked him, I said, sir, why were you so upset, confused? He said, look, how could I say lie when I know inside me that what was being done in Pakistan was not the right thing? Now, if I can sum up with that, the foreign policy is nothing that a diplomat abroad has some magic wand in his pocket and takes out and resolves the issues. It is a reflection of the policies that are followed at home. It is a reflection of the national cohesion, introduce laws and regulation which can bring the people quickly at par with the rest of the country. But that has not happened. And I'm mentioning it because that is our weakest point for our enemy to exploit. We are in a state of war, and the enemy would be trying to find weak points within us. And these are your weak points. And with very little, if it is done quick, all that we can think of. With that, I'll take your leave. Thank you very much.
Mustering support for Pakistan's stance. If you recall, before these events, our Prime Minister had offered a hand of peace. Immediately after Pulwama issue, the Prime Minister promised to cooperate in any kind of investigation that would satisfy India, and also brought their attention towards the benefits of peace and coming on to the negotiations table. But nothing was really given any importance, and India continued with their pursuit the way they wanted to do the things. If you look at the efforts that we made, we knocked at the doors of United Nations. Prince Mohammed bin Salman visited India, we requested him to convey our message as perhaps a demonstration of weakness by Pakistan. It was considered that Pakistan perhaps is begging for peace, going from door to door, and there was no such response from the Indian side. And now again, when you have a little upper hand, again we have offered a hand of peace, and we have requested the international community to come forward, diffuse the situation. And we have also repeated our previous offer to India to come forward, enter into the negotiations and diffuse the situation. But knowing Modi, the mindset he has, the man who was nurtured, groomed by RSS, a terrorist organization in India, and then his subsequent career, I have no hope that this man will ever think of adopting a peaceful path of negotiations with Pakistan till such time he faces some serious reverses. Otherwise, he'll continue with the pursuit. The mindset that prevails in India, which has been promoted by Modi primarily, is based on Hindutva, and he has just relied on Hindu votes. We have seen that Muslims are being persecuted, they are being lynched on the roadsides in the name of Gauraksha. Other minorities are also, the Dalits are being punished, they are being lynched. And at the same time, the Kashmiris are facing the Indian wrath. All types of human rights violations are being carried out there. And even those students who had gone to the Indian universities for their education on the Indian scholarships, they are being pulled out and they are being beaten. But when all this was happening in India, we never heard a word from Modi of condemnation, of helping the oppressed communities there, or there was no remorse, as a matter of fact. So that shows the mindset of a person who, for his own personal gains, political gains, can go to any extent, can base his politics on dead bodies, on bloodshed. And I think this is what is the reality that Pakistan has to keep in mind during the coming days. Now, the foreign policy has, in my mind, it has two very important challenges. If you recall that whenever there was an incident of terrorism in India, immediately the blame was put on Pakistan. And when Pakistan asked for a proof, the proof was not given. The mindset was that once India has said that you are responsible for this thing, then you should admit that you are really the culprit and you must be punished. Now that was India, one could accept that. But when you look at the international community, there again you have the same problem of credibility. You keep on denying, you keep on saying that we are not involved in any act of terrorism. The international community perhaps is not believing your word. Only yesterday, when I looked at the tweets which we received from Australia, from France, and also from Germany, they had sympathies with India. The foreign ministers, they had expressed sympathies. Two of them, they had accepted that India had a right to react against the terror camps in their war against terrorism. And at the end, the last line was that Pakistan should end terrorism. Now that is the basic problem that we are facing today, where I have a feeling that our foreign policy has really not created that space where we should be seen as innocent people. Now, just to give you the background so that the minds are clear that we know that we are not doing these things. Till about 2003, we had some jihadi camps in AK, and some of the political parties were also supporting them. We were also closing our eyes and allowing them to go across the LOC. But thereafter, when the war on terror started, and India started terming that struggle in Kashmir as terrorism, and Americans also started showing some concern about it, there was a change in policy. And right from January 2004, all camps had been dismantled from there. They were just told to get lost without really giving them any reason, without really de-radicalizing them. They were just ordered to leave and disappear from there. And that became the turning point. These organizations, they thought that we have, on behest of America, we have cheated the Kashmiris, we have withdrawn our support, and this is a criminal act as far as they were concerned. And that is how some of those organizations, they produced some rogue elements, and one of them was Punjabi Taliban. They fought against us, and some of the horrendous terror incidents were carried out on our territory, which included the attack on Sri Lankan cricket team also. And some of them, they joined the TTP ranks. The TTP perhaps was not at that time in action. They were just standing against the government, telling them that we want to go and fight against Americans with our brethren across the border, across 49 in Afghanistan. And their argument was that when Soviet Union had attacked Afghanistan, at that time, you told us that it is jihad, go and fight against them. Now when America has attacked Afghanistan, again Americans are outsiders, they are the invaders. Now you say it is not jihad, you should not go there. So we are not prepared to accept your logic. So preventing them from going across the border became a problem, and when we tried to do that with force, they started fighting against us. So that is how TTP started fighting against us, and that is how we invited the wrath of Punjabi Taliban and all those people who were otherwise jihadis and they were fighting in Kashmir. They left their places and started fighting against the state of Pakistan. Thereafter, till today, there may be some rogue elements, but we know that there is no such training camp in Pakistan and there are no such jihadi elements which are going to Kashmir. Because from 2003 onward, India started fencing the entire Kashmir border, and within about 2 years' time, it was completed, and from 2005 onward, it was almost impossible for anybody to go across into the Indian occupied Kashmir. Now, when this incident of Pathankot took place, India again blamed Pakistan. At that time, our Prime Minister was visiting Sri Lanka before even Indians could have been asked to produce any evidence. The Prime Minister rang up Mr. Modi and told him that he'll go back and investigate. So, talking obliquely, he had accepted the blame for Pakistan. So we also registered an FIR, and a joint inquiry was carried out by IB and also ISI. They visited some of the representatives, they also visited Indian side. Not a single evidence was produced. And the inquiry was concluded, but while we were carrying out that inquiry and investigation in Bhalpur area from where the telephone number had been picked up, we came to know that some of the rogue elements of Jaish-e-Mohammed, they had fallen into the hands of RAW. Some of them had been taken to Afghanistan, and from there they had been taken to India, which gave us an indication that this could be a false flag operation. While we were conducting this investigation, we found out that another attack is going to take place within about 7 days in Indian Gujarat. 10 people will participate in that attack. We came to know about 6 names, and after getting approval from the Prime Minister, our National Security Advisor, Nasir Khan Janjua, passed this information to his counterpart in India. They were told that this attack is being planned, we have come to know, and these are the 6 names with those people which they should have captured, and that again remained a mystery. So the point to ponder is that if we were involved in terrorist activities in India, then why should we inform Indians about the Gujarat attack? And we also came to know that there are certain other people from Jaish who had been taken away by the Indians, and perhaps they will use them whenever there is any opportunity. Now, what was the purpose of using? What was the purpose? Now, when we look at the whole game which is being played, then it is all related to the foreign policy which India is practicing against Pakistan. Now, their foreign policy objectives vis-a-vis Pakistan were, first, get Pakistan declared a state sponsoring terrorism, thereby inviting sanctions on this country, and under the economic pressures, let the country explode from within. Second, get Pakistan totally isolated diplomatically, so that if they cry, their voice should not be heard. They should not have anyone in the international community to side and stand with them. And third was that the struggle in Kashmir, which is absolutely a genuine indigenous struggle of the people of Kashmir, that should somehow be turned and accepted by the international community as Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. And this requirement of projecting the Kashmiri struggle as the Pakistan-sponsored terrorism became very, very important for them. And this perhaps today is their primary objective. This happened because of the human rights violation report which was penned by the United Nations Committee on Human Rights. Thereafter, they have started facing embarrassment at the international level. Pakistan has been confronting in the European Parliament, also in the British Parliament, and elsewhere in the European capitals. We have been going around trying to bring their attention towards the human rights violations. These are not our blames. This was not a story cooked up by Pakistan. This was an internationally accepted document which was produced by United Nations. So there was a great embarrassment. People were criticizing the use of pellet guns. And use of pellet guns, as you see the result, it is all inhuman. Usually the pellet guns are used against animals and for shikar, etc. Now, once it is accepted by the international community that it is terrorism, then you know that in war and terrorism there is no restriction on use of any weapon. You can even use heavy guns. So that is the purpose, that whatever human rights violations are taking place, even these are doubled, India should not have any fallout from international community, and they should be able to crush that struggle which is going on in Kashmir. So when these are the three basic points, basic objectives of the foreign policy, then any incident of terrorism which takes place in India, this will be very important if it is used in that way, and straight away the allegation is laid down on Pakistan. Now there can be an argument that why India or why any other country should stage a false flag operation and then kill their own people. See, the national objectives are always much more important than few lives. An incident, any incident which is a false flag operation, unless you have complete realism in that, it will not be accepted by the experts. It will be analyzed and thrown in your face that it is a false flag operation. So to create realism in discrediting our credibility, so we have to establish our credibility. A plan, thorough plan, a campaign has to be devised where we must be able to establish our innocence, where the people should start believing your word, not like this, that the moment Pulwama. Now the other tragedy, or other one would say that challenge that we are facing in our foreign policy. I think Dr. Slary explained this thing, whether the IMF problem of our economy very elaborately. But let me talk about the current issue that we are facing. The issue related to the invitation extended by OIC to Sushma Swaraj. The invitation has been sent by the Foreign Minister of UAE. I think they also got the consent from Saudi Arabia. Now we are now trying to counter this move and trying to tell Saudi Arabia and UAE that we'll boycott. You can't do this thing. This is not your father's organization. This is an organization which belongs to 59 countries. How can you do this? But can we really dictate when we are getting loans from UAE, we are getting bailout packages from Saudi Arabia? Can we show our eyes? So this will be a setback. Those who look after your economy, those who help you out in your difficult times, they have a leverage on you. And that is where ultimately your sovereignty is challenged. So I think, as Ayaz Wazir Sahab was saying, that we have to improve our own internal situation where the unity, perhaps is very important, unity of the nation, but at the same time we have to go through some tough times and be ready to do that so that our economy improves. And if we can, within 2-3 years, stand on our feet, perhaps then you can hope to have an independent foreign policy where the others will not have any leverage.
Colleagues, Ajmal Wazir Sahab, General Shoaib Sahab, Shafqat Munir Sahab, and thank you very much, audience, for convening over here at this juncture when this topic is almost ongoing. It's being rolled out. Strategic coercion as part of foreign policy. And my colleagues have really elaborated a lot on it. I have just come into the government and taken over foreign policy, let's say about 6 months ago. And I think the analysis that they've done about the foreign policy as it was is very accurate and very apt. You know, we've been seeing it since 2002, the incident that he mentioned, and post that incident, how it has been continuously being used by our neighborhood. So, as a government, when we came in the Foreign Office, we looked at India and we know what India was doing and is doing even right now. We looked at Afghanistan, and Afghanistan was saying, okay, just wait what we are going to do with you. We looked at Iran, and Iran was turning the other way around. We looked at Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia was, sorry, we are too busy to talk to you. We looked at UAE, and UAE didn't even pick up our phone call for the last 10 years. And of course, we looked at US, and all you have to do is to find out a tweet, and the tweet of Trump, you're responsible, do more, you're the troublemaker in the region and the world. So in we come in the government with this lovely, conducive foreign policy environment. And that's the welcome I received in the Foreign Office. And what my colleagues have just said, and they're very senior people to me, I don't profess to have that knowledge that they have, I think has drawn the challenges very accurately. I totally agree with Ajmal Wazir Saab when he said that, you know, as a state, if you're not sovereign and you're not economically independent, and you're constantly on the beck and call for every penny that you have to spend on foreign powers, then you cannot have an independent foreign policy. And that has been the state of affairs for the last decade and a half. As they say, beggars can't be choosers. So that problem was there, and we are trying to deal with it. Secondly, very rightly put by General Shoaib, on our inability to use whatever we had successfully to the international audience. Our case to the international audience was not put. They are you know, when you say it's a weak case or you say it's a sort of a disparate case, that's a separate adjective. But the case was not put at all. And like I said, and I'm an incurable optimist, but a very relentless pragmatist also. So when I look at these things, we look at the glass is half full or half empty. There's a lot that can be done. And I think in the last 6 months, I always say that about the economy and the foreign policy. These are the two things that I've been involved with so far. The direction is changing. And let me tell you, reforms and direction changing, and most of you have been involved through that. Even in a small company, to change the direction of a company which has about 200 people, it takes 2 years. Imagine changing a country with 200 million people. It's going to take time, but direction agar sahi ho jaye na, simt durust sahi ho jaye, then one can be comfortable. So the esteemed colleagues, the Ambassador Ayaz Wazir with his great wisdom has been talking about FATA, has been talking about Balochistan, absolutely. And whatever happened over there was because these areas were not given attention. There's no doubt about that. And what I'm going to be talking about, and coincidentally I have a background I'm a student of international relations and international policy, and this Monday the article that I wrote was on rethinking international diplomacy. It was a coincidence. Last week I was thinking about what's happening in Pakistan, and I said, okay, let's bend down. And I've been involved in the Foreign Office in trying to bring that directional change in the foreign policy. So I'll just discuss a couple of things with you on what they have suggested and what we are doing. And it's a long haul, but I do feel that the turn is taking place. Firstly, the concept of strategic coercion is a very popular concept and is still being used. But it's a more or less partial concept. You know, hard power and soft power as part of foreign policy all over the world are being used together. So the hard power, which is basically using strategic coercion or force or just singularly military power or economic power to force people into subjugation, has had its shortcomings, and people are realizing that now. Soft power, which is more subtle, because hard power is imposition and forced. Soft power is co-option and attraction. Anything that is forced will be short-term and not sustainable. Anything which is co-opted and shared and attracted will be long-term. But mostly, if you look at countries, in foreign policy, it's natural for them to use hard power because it's easy. It's direct, you can measure it, you can force it, you can see the impact of it. Do more or we will not do this. Right? So you have a direct impact of it and it's easier and you get away with it for a while. But soft power is, our foreign policy is what we are making right at the moment, what we are practicing also, and I'll give you some examples of that as well. One is economic diplomacy. And that's hard and soft both. It can be termed as a hard power and it can be termed as a soft power as well. And of course, you have to be an economic power like China or India to be able to exert that power. But even given that, Pakistan has a very, very, very big potential. And I think we've not been using it. And we've just started using it right now. Because you're talking to the 6th largest market in the world. You're talking to the 5th largest democracy in the world. And that part of it has been negatively portrayed. So when I look at the rising powers in the world, which is China and India, both have used their populations to their advantage. 1 billion, 1.5 billion. And when you look at the West, they are shrinking populations over there. So we've started, if you see the Prime Minister's speeches, if you see our, communiques, you'll start looking at, in the Ministry of Commerce, we've started the Emerging Pakistan brand, and we've started sort of softly through our foreign offices and through our communique, spreading that word around. Now, ideally, it should have been what happened to Europe after the World War, where the strategic coercion became obsolete. And Europe realized that economic diplomacy is what is going to save them if they want to compete with big powers like America. So in 1950, Europe, in the Treaty of Maastricht, became a single market act they passed out. That Europe is going to be one. Instead of fighting wars, Germany, France, we will be one. And over a period of time, 50 years, they became a single market. From a FTA from a PTA to an FTA to a common market, and then a monetary and political union as well. And 350 million consumers market. And that's how, and they had one currency, euro. So that economic diplomacy made them a power. So you negotiate with 27 countries instead of one. So that gave them that power. Now that UK is coming out of Brexit, UK is coming out of it, you will see how this economic diplomacy is going to take a turn in UK. Investments are going to go out. Negotiations are going to become tough. Because the economic diplomacy is now at a hit. Right? Okay, so that's one thing that we are trying to use. And that's why we have Saudi Arabia coming in with investment. The Prime Minister has been selling the vision of Pakistan, because if you sell the economy of Pakistan, macroeconomic variables at the moment are not very good. But they've started changing. Exports have started going up and imports have started going down. Not to the extent that we would like them to, but if you couple that with the potential, I think the investment that we are bringing in Saudi Arabia, and then when Saudi Arabia invests, and I very much agree with General Shoaib over here, when he says that when all these countries have investments, like India has investments, then what they say against us, they will think twice. If these countries have 10 billion, 20 billion investments in our countries, then we have the foreign policy space to get them on our side. So that's what we are aiming at, that the big players do economic diplomacy, and it's always trade, never aid, which gets you the foreign policy space. Aid takes you towards strategic coercion, trade takes you towards economic diplomacy. We had a very good conference. We called our major ambassadors for the first time, and I was surprised. Our ambassador who's been appointed in the US turned around to me and he said, you know, in my 30 years of career, this is the first time that I've been called up over here and we've been put through this whole process of how, as foreign ambassadors and missions, you are, you are salesmen also. You're economic, you're trade representatives, you're economic ambassadors. And what does economic diplomacy mean? It just doesn't mean one for one, okay, you won, which is the soft power, which is the power in the world which is being used. Cultural diplomacy. That's soft power. And countries have used that to their advantage in a big way. We all know how US used its pop culture to invade the whole world, not just the military might, the pop culture. The pop culture includes the fast food, the movies, Hollywood, all this. And we also know how Bollywood has used it to infiltrate the language, the terms. If you see our children, they use the same terms that are used in music and all that, those factors. Plus there is sports diplomacy, there is education diplomacy in culture, and there's religious diplomacy. That's all part of the cultural diplomacy. And as you know, Saudi Arabia does the religious tourism and diplomacy very well. We have the Makkah, Medina, all Muslims all over the world come over there. We know Italy does the Vatican very well, where all the Catholics gather over there, major source of revenue, major source of bonding. What we are doing over here, and we've started that initiative, is that we have Southeast Asia. And, you know, starting from Sri Lanka down to the Asia Pacific, to Thailand, all this area, China sector, these are Buddhist countries. So we've made a strategy on how, and we have some of the best archaeological, historical, Buddhist artifacts and historical legacies. So what we are doing is that we are going to be, and you'll be looking at it, that the religious tourism, from there we made a strategy as to how to improve that and bring the countries to, because we have a, you know, as Muslims, when we go to Saudi Arabia, we have a bond with them because of that. When the Christians come to Vatican, there's a bond. So when you come, and Kartarpur diplomacy was part of that religious diplomacy. And as you know, that has worked so well that in this huge jingoism that has been going on in India, the Sikh community and the MPs, Navjot Sidhu, many of them have not gone by what the Indian thought is and has been towing our line to a certain extent. So that's part of the cultural diplomacy. Then there's the personal diplomacy part and the soft power and the person-to-person contact. And we have a very big brand in our hands, which we never had. I'm glad some of you have mentioned that. And that is Mr. Imran Khan and his personal credibility. And that is a brand that we have used. If you know, previously, there are many examples of that in the world, where leader-to-leader contact has solved so many political issues of which were unsolvable for 10 years. Bill Clinton and Mandela were on phone call basis. And remember, there was no WhatsApp at that time and there was no mobile phone at that time. But they were on hotlines all the time. And they were so close that when the Lockerbie bombing happened in Libya at Gaddafi's time, and all diplomatic sanctions took place, Mr. Mandela stepped in. And he did this power. He actually stepped in. The bombers, he made them negotiate, sit on the same table. The bombers were punished. And in return, the diplomatic sanctions were removed. So this was a win-win. Similarly, I think Mr. Vajpayee at that one time, remember, people make fun of that how the Prime Minister has been, our Prime Minister has been driving people around as a chauffeur. But that's the diplomacy. Mr. Vajpayee had that bus diplomacy when he came to Lahore. And our Prime Minister has been personally, and that's part of the personal diplomacy, because we have a brand which is credible. And we can use that brand. And very important part, I think, what General Shoaib mentioned, which has been missing, has been the public diplomacy. Identifying the major publics in the foreign audience and in the local audience. What the narrative building has been, and he's absolutely right, the narrative building of India for at least 15 years has been bought, sold, accepted in a lot of circles. One is the intellectual circles. If you go around and look at the think tanks in the world, you'll have a lot of Indians over there. If you look and go around and see universities, half the professors writing books, writing papers, writing research are over there, and in the international media also. I'll give you an example of that. Mr. Asad Umar, our finance minister, gave an interview of Hard Talk to BBC. And very rightly put by General Shoaib again. And he talked about Kulbhushan Yadav. He said, we have terrorism, India does it, Kulbhushan Yadav, we have... And that, when his interview was relayed, was cut out. BBC, British. And then when we found out, we of course made a whole social media campaign, we went on the social media, and then they put it back. But that's how strong the lobby is over there. And yes, we have been at fault because for so many years, the intellectual think tanks and the public audiences over there have been totally ignored. So, like they say, diplomacy is the art of letting other people do what you want to do. Diplomacy is the art of saying, go to hell and make people enjoy the trip. And it's an art, and it's a science also. So we are over here in a difficult position. But I think what has happened is, and I'll give you some instances on that. First time the international media, if you read the media, it has been, well, sit down and talk. It hasn't just said that, you terrorists. So there's a change, you can see the directional change, and I can quote international editions on you. Second, we've had people who have been siding by us. It's too early and too short a time to really change people's opinion, but we have to work really hard at it. And we need a strategic foreign policy integrated strategy, which we have. Some of it has been rolled out, some of it is in way, including all these diplomacies, to be participating with some very strong military diplomacy that we already have. That has been a strength. But we need to add the other parts of diplomacy to make it really worthwhile. Because as Sun Tzu in his Strategies of War says, the supreme strategy of war is to beat the enemy without fighting it. So over here we have to use both powers, and it's a very tough ask. 14 years of established narratives have to be broken. 10 years of cold relationships have to be turned warm. But I think the glass is half full, not half empty. And with all these experts over here and with all these think tanks sitting all around us, inshallah we will get out of this present strategic coercion in a much better and a much more assertive manner, as Pakistan being a brand to be respected and trusted in the world. Thank you.
Pakistan particularly, you talked about. Thank you so much. General Sahab has.
Question is, he asked me something. Imran Khan ne kaha tha, and we said, hey, this is not our war.
Has to provide their airports and their facilities for attack inside the NATO country. Why were Taliban supported and then left?
On behalf of SDPI, I would like to thank all the honorable speakers for their valuable thoughts. Hope we'll